feel guilty when you're copying from another person's work? Is that bothering you? Today, I'm going to take you behind the scenes. We're going to have a little nerd out session over all things copying. Yeah, we're going to go back in time. First of all, to the cavemen. That's right. Now, I am an anthropology major. Fun fact, I never planned to be an artist. I never even wanted to be one. I was an anthropologist and I studied cultures and monkeys and how that tied into human evolution. And did you know that even cavemen were using their eyeballs to see and to copy the world around them? That's right. There is evidence, this is so bananas, that as far back as 25,000 years ago, human beings were recording information from their environment, meaning plants, animals, even the human hand, and recording that outside of their bodies by making cave paintings in which they lived. And do you think that they sat around and dreamed up mammals, woolly mammoths, and all the cool things that they were drawing on their cave walls? No, those were actual items and animals and things that they saw with their eyeballs, and they used that information to draw and paint. Long before we were ever writing, we were drawing, and it's always been in our human nature to look at something and try to replicate it. How freaking cool is that? So I want to bust through all of your insecurities about copying. It is not stealing in a bad way. It is stealing in the most natural, positive way possible. It is how humans actually learn. It's how we get better at recording what's in our environment the more we do it. And to help you combat all this negativity and guilt, also, in addition to this video, so stay tuned and watch to the end, I have a little cheat sheet for you. Now, I'm famous for my cheat sheets. People literally follow me around the internet trying to collect them all. I have 33 now. And this one is 10 reasons why cheating is smart. It is smart, and it will make you a better artist. There are copyright things and issues we will talk about in next week's video, but it is so smart, and it's how you are going to learn the best. So let's go over each of these 10 items. And in case you're new to my world, my name is Campbell. I have dedicated this channel to all the Gen Xers and Boomers out there who want to be good at art just because it feels good on the inside. We're here to have fun and to learn, and you love learning just like I do. So I have a lot to share with you today. This is such a fun video for me to make. So out of all the 10 reasons, number 1 is that it trains your eyes to be able to create more accurately and to nail your proportions. Now, this is really fun. So the biggest, earliest tool that humans came up with to help them with all of this is the grid system. You might have learned how to use the grid system in your own art school. I have a good friend, Bryn Wynn, who teaches the grid system for my students in my awesome art school. And here's a little sneak peek. But before we go to Bryn's lesson, I have to tell you something that is so freaking fascinating about the grid system. In the early days, and I'll show you a picture, they actually constructed like a wooden frame inside of which were vertical and horizontal strings to make a grid. And then the artist would literally look through this, and they had this statue that would like orient their eye in the same exact way so they wouldn't lose their place. You see the grid, and then they would redraw the grid down here on the paper, look through the holes in their physical grid, and then they would recreate what they're seeing there onto their paper. Oh my God. So genius. So as we watch Bryn using the grid method in a real life lesson from me, I just wanted to flash back or refer back to that image I just showed you about the ancient Egyptians, you might have noticed. Fun fact, that's correct. The grid method for drawing has actually been around since ancient times. That's right, as early as 1300 BCE. And it was used in ancient Egypt specifically to scale up their drawings on walls, each square helping them copy proportions accurately. They also used it for recreating those giant statues that they're so famous for. The technique resurfaced again during the Renaissance period when artists like Leo da Vinci and Albrecht Dürer used grids to transfer and enlarge their sketches with precision. Even Vermeer is believed to have used a very famous object, which we now know as the camera obscura, which allows him to copy accurately light and perspective. Copying has always been part of how humans learned to draw. Medieval apprentices traced their master's work. Art students in the 1800s, they copied plaster casts and classical paintings. Why? Because replicating what we see teaches our eyes how to see and our hands how to follow. So next time someone says copying is cheating to you, just smile and say, actually, you know what? It's historic. So number 2 is coming right off the heels of number 1, which is that it really also helps our eye see things more clearly, like folds in fabric and lighting and shadow. So accuracy, not only in terms of the outside or contour line, but also within all the other components that are going on in a painting or a drawing or in your real environment photo or in real life. It helps with everything. So I came up with my own little method for doing this. That's a little bit different than the grid because I hate a grid. I don't know why, I just hate it. This is like lazy man's grid, which also is super helpful in doing all the outside things and also helps your eye and train you to notice all the little things down to the granularest, teeny tiny little detail. And I call my method the Quadrant Method. So the reason I developed the Quadrant Method is that it eliminates any extra need for squares that you don't need to be working with. You're only drawing, first of all, a container. I call it a character container, where you're literally wrapping up your subject in a rectangle. And then you're only adding more rectangles on your reference where you need more precision. And you keep drawing smaller and smaller rectangles down into the quadrants, hence the name, or areas that you need more information or more help drawing specific details. It works so well, and then you don't waste any extra effort or any time on any areas. You don't need to sit and draw all these boxes in empty spaces. So you can end up drawing way more detail because you can add on as many quadrants as you need to for the area that you're working on. So if you have a big giant area with only 2 lines, then you can leave it blank. If you need to go in to really nail down the exact details, you keep adding on your quadrants. You can add them so itty bitty, and then that way when you're doing them on your reference and then you recreate the same exact quadrants on your final, you have every piece of information you could possibly have to make the most accurate drawing in the whole wide world, but also get into the granular elements of all the shading and lighting, etc. It works amazing. The third reason why copying is not cheating and it's so helpful is that it really helps speed up your learning because it provides a visual blueprint. But you can also get informed for things like the composition of a piece, right? There's so much more on a page than just the objects themselves. There's things that are in the background, mid-ground, there's details. There's so much going on in an entire composition. So having something to look at to help you inform where everything is going to go gives you a plan like that, and there's no downside to that. And doesn't mean you have to copy anything exactly, and this is the whole thing we're going to be covering in next week's video, but you can get so much information that can inspire you. Just one little nugget, one little piece of information and help from looking at something is going to speed up your process so much faster. So that's insanely helpful. So yeah, do it and don't feel bad about it. Number 4, I actually think is the most exciting and impactful, and that copying allows us to study different styles, which is cool in and of itself, but there's a little add-on to that, which is that it also helps to evolve our own. Because a great example of this is that I use references from other artists, whether that by be asking them or purchasing them for all of my different clubs at Awesome Art School. I do a huge variety of different lessons from fantasy to realism and everything in between. So by doing all of these different styles, myself and my members get to try on these styles from other artists. So you might be doing art that you never could dream possible on your own. And then over time, what happens is that like subconsciously and then also consciously, you can take little snippets from here, little snippets from there, and then they combine into becoming what is your own unique style. That's a result of doing these deep dives, going deep on one particular style super hard. You'll end up borrowing those whether you realize it or not. And then that is what makes you unique as an artist. But again, more on that in next week's video. And then number 5 is very much in relation to this, in that it just inspires completely new things to begin with. And I have a really concrete example on how I like to teach this to my students as well. So I've gone to great lengths to use the Quadrant Method to help teach people in my Fun Fab Drawing Club how to draw exactly. So we quite literally, we've already talked about this with the Quadrant Method, we will exactly copy a sketch from another artist. And then, and this is where number 5 comes in, we do an entirely separate lesson on how to take the reference and make it completely different and make it completely our own. And so what I do to help my students out is after we've drawn the first one exactly, so in this one, of course, we're really increasing and adding onto our observation skills. We're practicing, copying, and recording this information exactly as we see it, doing the shading, doing the contour, doing all of the highlights and making it exact. And then I give them a list of 9 things that they can change to make this same figure 100% different. Completely their own. Is such a fun exercise. So we can still use the Quadrant Method to relay that the important information like proportions. Okay, but then we pivot and using our list of 9 things we can do to change this up. And it's change the hair, change the clothes, add props. And so in this example, we use all of them. It's such a fun exercise. So students can follow me and we end up making this woman warrior with wolf, obviously familiar. And then it's just the exercise of using a combination of using the original reference as a springboard, right? But while having like ultimate flexibility and creativity on developing a new character. 6 is also a big deal because it actually helps improve your visual memory for your future work. So what do I mean by that? If you sit down and take a weekend to say, open one of my books and practice eyes, doing realistic eyes, step by step through my book, How to Draw and Find Your Style, and you do it 10 times. I feel if you then closed the book and went to go draw that same eye again on your own, you would do a hell of a lot better. Having done it looking at that eye the first 10 times, even if you had only done it once, I think your eye would be infinitely better than if you had looked at nothing and just tried to draw an eye from your imagination. Continuing to use references, even as you go and grow, it only will help you become a better artist faster. 7 is huge too. Every point is so important, is that using a reference reduces anxiety because you don't have to fear the blank page anymore. And you don't need to worry about where or how to start. You just look at it and then you go. I'm sorry, but that is magical. And knowing how to start and like breaking past your fear of the blank page is like the most common problem that I hear about people having. But all you need to do is go look at stuff. That's all you have to do. So where are we? We are number 8. Wow, we're cruising along here. This is awesome and relevant to people that love to do fantasy art, which I for sure am one of those people. I have a whole Celtic Collected club where fantasy art is all we do in there with my friend Lucy. Hi, Lucy. So what is important about using references for that is that can really ground your fantasy art in believability. So what does that mean? This immediately makes me think of surrealist artists like Salvador Dali, and specifically Vladimir Kush. I go to Vegas every year with my husband for our anniversary, and there's a Kush gallery there. Let me share some of this work with you. It's so cool. So this is a book that I purchased when I was in Vegas, and they have a Kush gallery there. And I purchased this book, and his work is so unique, and you can really feel like his combining of multiple, honestly, photos. Really, they're very highly realistic. These have windmills crossed with dragonflies or butterflies. You have the moonscape, right? But a large scale of a human, which makes it look like he's sitting right at the moon. But this is a bed of grass, but it also looks like the head of a broom with a human sticking out of this. You have this long gangplank on it, which sits a fish. So you have these elements of like high realism that are mixed with this hugely imaginative features, and then putting them together is what it makes it feel so eerily believable. Hanging this fish as if it was a draping fabric. Oof, gives me goosebumps. It's a very profound mix when you have these features combined together. Number 9, I feel like, is as equally playful as number 8, and that is so that you can explore variations from one source. And this is something that I love to do in my Fun Fab Drawing Club, in my Fun Fab Figures classroom. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So what does it mean to explore variations from one source? That means, how can you take your one reference, and again, my example is drawing directly from my drawing club when we were learning how to draw this Art Deco dame, and variations means taking the base form and then transforming it into something entirely new. So you can really imagine, okay, what is a woman who's holding her hand out like this, other than holding a long-stemmed cigarette? What could someone be doing with this pose? So what are some other variations? For me, after I went through the process of transcribing all of this information perfectly and making this Art Deco dame, the whole time I was drawing her, I was thinking of what else could I do with this position, this posture, this reference, to make it totally different. And this is where I came up with the idea of doing a mermaid, because why else would you hold in your hand in this position? I thought, well, that's what a new bride would be looking at her ring. So this is variation number 2. And this Art Deco dame, or this Art Deco diva, became a mermaid who was admiring her ring that had just been given to her by her new fiance, also a mermaid. Thank goodness they can live happily ever after in their underwater inky depths. So this kind of imagination and imaginative work can absolutely stem from a single straightforward reference. There's so much information that you can use references for, whether that's to be completely exact or as a springboard for different variations of the same exact form. And we will be talking much more at length about this in next week's video, where I'm not going to give you just 9 ideas, but 20 different ways to create art that's your own. I think the most impactful of all the reasons of all is that every pro has used references from the beginning of time, which we've already talked about. But I'm not just talking about cavemen. I'm also talking about professional artists and some of the most talented and famous artists that we've ever known of all time. People like Leonardo da Vinci and Norman Rockwell, where you can actually go to a museum in Stoughton, Mass. And see all of his reference photographs that he took so that he could do and experiment with different variations. So he can nail the footsteps, he can nail the foot bend, he can nail the expressions. Those are all based off of real life people. And I'll also share with you and finish off sharing with you a book that I own that has some really cool examples of this as well. So while there's a ton of examples, I'll just show you one for the sake of time. This is a book I have, Art Book of Robert McGinnis, and who was an illustrator. He did a million magazine and book covers, but here is from his archives here, photograph. Okay, his concept sketches. Talk about variations. These are all based off of real actual humans that he took pictures of, and then here is his final work. He could not have done this from his imagination. He did it from a photo. So I hope this whole video helps to remind you that you're human, and creating is just another way of recording onto a piece of paper or onto a canvas what it is you're looking at. We're just transcribing information. And if you ever get scared about copying again, just think of the cavemen. When they were drawing their woolly mammoths in the cave, it was because they were looking at the woolly mammoth in their cave. Maybe were they in the cave? I don't know, but they were looking at it. Those were not creatures from their imagination. They were recording all the little juicy bits and details about their woolly mammoth meal for that night. Okay, so next week, if you are worried about how to find references and how to use references from other artists so that it's not cheating, and you want to go on and sell your work and do other things, or just being original is super important to you, subscribe now so you don't miss out on watching next week's video. And don't forget, I have actually 3 cheat sheets for you that are for free. Just let me know in the comments if you want them below. One is these 10 ideas I talked about in this video. The second one is 20 ways to be original using references, which we'll definitely need for next week's video. And the third one is actually a list of both free and paid resources that artists can use that are above board to have references and resources that you can copy without worrying about you're copying them, because they're legit. Okay, I will see you next week for a new video. And if you're interested how I went from monkey lover to artist, you can watch this video right here and you can hear my whole story.